The Mageseeker came out of nowhere. Despite having been worked on for 4 years, its existence was a secret until just a few months ago. I recently went to PAX and had the opportunity to sit in on a panel and meet these amazing developers as they poured their love out for this game. That got me even more hyped than I already was initially after seeing the announcement. I wouldn't call myself a League of Legends fan, but I have played the game and I understand the concept of a MOBA. Translating that into a beautiful, and I mean beautiful, pixel art action RPG was a task that Digital Sun nailed and also failed in some ways. Let's talk about it. Hello world and all who inhabit it, it is I, the Great Seiran, and besides Arcane, I know nothing about League of Legends lore. Despite that, the Mageseeker was able to sell me on a concept and hook me on a title about a champion I had never heard of, Sylas. The Mageseeker is set in Demacia and follows the story of Sylas, a bloodthirsty, revenge-seeking, magic-stealing, chain-wielding badass. He actually reminds me a lot of Kratos. Sylas was born with the ability to sense magic in others and used this skill to hunt down magic wielders called mages. For some reason, magic is outlawed in Demacia and they literally persecute, execute, imprison, all of that. Sylas was recruited as a child to be a Mageseeker, so he thought he was doing the right thing, but honestly, he was being misled. He tried to save a young mage by absorbing her magic, a skill he didn't know he had, going against the order, and was imprisoned for the rest of his life. He was eventually going to be executed but tricked Lux into stealing her magic and broke free. That's important to know because 1, this game's story is actually good, and 2, that's where this game starts, in the middle of a burning city, and it looks amazing. From the destructible environments to the color pop of the fire to the background animations, this pixel art game was actually hand drawn frame by frame. I believe the devs said it was over 89,000 frames, so let's appreciate the effort that went into that. This is an action RPG, so of course we have to talk about the action. Sylas has basic light and heavy attacks which you can chain however you like into combos. There's also dash and chain hook mechanics which gives you a frame of invincibility that is extremely helpful for when a boss decides to bullet hell you. Everything feels super precise and nothing ever feels unfair. If I get hit, it's my fault, and I can usually pinpoint my mistimed dash, or if I spent too long risking a combo for extra damage instead of stepping back to avoid hits. You can't dash cancel, which is usually how I like to play action games. I like to get in, do my damage, and get out whenever I want. The Mageseeker doesn't let you do that, and I kind of appreciate it. You have to finish every frame of every hit. You can't just cancel out of the longer startup of your heavy attack, so while you get good damage, you'll also take good damage if you aren't careful. I mentioned Sylas can copy abilities, and it's really cool how they implemented that into this game. While most games would do one or the other, you can have a predetermined specific setup of up to 4 magic skills that use mana to activate, or just steal them from the diverse enemies you encounter. Now you can't just steal them for free. You need to use the right stick to aim and lock on to the specific enemy whose ability you want to steal. Then you have a one-time use of that ability. You can steal magic over and over again from the same enemy, but there's a cooldown. Lesser enemies have a quicker cooldown since their magic won't do as much damage, but the big time enemies will have longer cooldowns. You can even steal magic from the bosses. I was frustrated at the little damage I was doing in the Garen boss fight. I eventually just thought, hey, can I steal his magic? And boom, I cleared more damage than I had all fight. In addition to basic combos and stealing magic, you can also use the little side character guys to make elemental combos. My favorite early game combo was Nia's, which is a chain grab into a heavy attack then light attack. It creates this AoE ring of fire that comes in clutch when there's a lot of enemies on the screen. As I progressed and found more friends to help with my combos, I fell in love with Alara and her dash into heavy light, which shoots out these magic projectiles. This was perfect for doing damage to faraway enemies or helping me get extra damage while up close in the combo. Each of the 6 elements has a character that allows for a combo while also boosting that element's magical damage when you use that type of spell. You can equip up to 2 per mission, which is really cool for creating a dope build that suits your playstyle. It's even more helpful when you have a very specific set of magic you want to use, but your enemy may be weak to one that you hadn't equipped. Instead of hoping there are enemies of that magic element to steal from, you can just use a combo that does that element's damage without using any mana. You can even level up these characters and get upgraded versions of these combos, so instead of shooting 1 projectile in Alara's combo, I shoot 4. Pretty sweet. The enemies are very diverse and each have their own magic to steal, which I mentioned earlier. After copying the magic once, it'll be available immediately to buy in the store the next time you go to your base, and from there you can permanently equip it. Oh, and after defeating enemies, their body just lays there and doesn't disappear like it does in other games, and I just think that's a really nice touch. You can also level up Sylas' stats in the stores. There are several characters you can buy stat boosts from. Aiden upgrades your potions count and effectiveness, but Kara buffs your Unchained mode, and from her you can unlock ultimates. Oh yeah, there are ultimates. Ultimates can't be bought, and you actually get them after defeating certain bosses. There are a bunch to choose from, and all have different abilities and effects, but the one that works best for me is Dragon's Descent. This ultimate summons a dragon that leaves a fiery area in its wake, doing chip damage. Perfect for bosses with a lot of health. But back to Unchained mode for a sec. It's your ultimate form where you do big damage with physical and magic attacks, and you can build up your meter by beating the snot out of enemies. I do have one gripe. I wish I could just spam magic without using any mana. It's a single player game, and I want a delete everything button. The combat is very detailed, and it's what what got me interested in the title, but the level design and story kept me locked in. The mission structure is basic. It's go here and do this. But there are side missions that you or your combo characters can do. There's an automatic and just get you rewards, but the side missions you do are fun. They have their own interesting storylines, and one of them has a tower type vibe to it. You defeat a floor and move on to the next, but in between, you can choose new magic with side effects that have varying levels of efficiency. For instance, I got some magic that multiplied my damage output based on my current health. Then I got magic that healed a bit of my health every time I defeated an enemy on the next floor. And then on the floor after that, I got magic that increased my overall health. So yes, I was a menace that run. This could honestly be a game in itself if it was fleshed out just a bit more. There are so many ways to enjoy this game, but without all the fluff. The levels are gorgeous, and I really can't express enough to you all how beautiful this game looks on my OLED Nintendo Switch. Dashing or using my chains to interact with the environment and zipping that way is super fun too. I love how each level is different even if we revisit the same area. We may see new enemies or new ways to interact with the environment based on where we are in the story. There are these cute little birds to find on every level, and these letters Mages or whoever else left that tell even more of the lore. It's very intentional, and I have to praise them for keeping everything so unique throughout my playthrough. The story is also good. As you help lead and fight in this rebellion against Mageseekers, you uncover side character story in addition to Silas's, so you really begin to fall in love with this world. Silas has real pain, and you can understand why he's fighting the mages and wants to kill the Mageseekers. But you also see a change in him when other characters ask if revenge is all he wants and if he even wants to build a new world for the mages to live and thrive in. I didn't expect to be so captured by the story. Okay, so we talked about combat, magical stuff, skill trees, story, visuals, side characters. Yeah, okay, great game, right? Well, I played this game on the Nintendo Switch, and I did not think the game would have any issue running as it's a top-down pixel art 2D action RPG. Surely my Switch can handle it, right? And my maybe 8 to 10 hours of gameplay, which is the sweet spot for games, don't let anyone tell you differently, I experienced over 15 crashes. At first, it was all in the hideout, which is your base hub in between missions. Then, it happened in a late game 3-phase boss fight. I had spent 15 minutes on this boss, and when my game crashed, I had to redo phase 1 and 2 all over again. This wouldn't be the worst thing ever if getting into the game didn't take forever. Once you're in the game, load screens don't take long at all, but getting to that point after every crash is pretty annoying. The Mageseeker also has that weird issue where if I put my Switch into sleep mode, it keeps tracking my in-game hours, so I honestly don't know how many hours this game takes. After doing every side quest to that point, the game told me I was at 4 hours and 30 minutes and had progressed exactly 50%, so I guess use that as a metric. There was a string of like 6 crashes back to back when I was trying to buy something in the store before a mission that actually fixed that issue, but then it came back. I usually don't care about crashes that often. I played a lot of games on the Switch and have had games crash before, but this many crashes can't go unaddressed. I wish the game would at least let me press start to skip through all the dialogue so I can get back into the action I just crashed out from. Speaking of dialogue, it's very good, but I wish there was a bit more voice acting. Silas and the others may grunt or scream a word in a boss fight, but that's it. The story is good, so I don't want to skip it, but there are moments I had a tough time not just skipping and going to the next thing. I mean, Riot has the money to help these indie developers get voice acting in their games. Let's not play. I also had this weird audio glitch that sounds like I was emulating the game rather than playing it natively on Switch hardware. Listen to this. It didn't happen often, but it happened enough to annoy me. When there's a bunch of enemies on screen, the game does start to chug a bit, but I blame the Switch for that, not the game, since it really only does it when there's like 20 enemies all animated doing magic, etc. Don't get me wrong, this is an amazing game and I loved every minute of it. And I'm sure that there'll be patches soon to address these issues, right? I don't usually skip because of that, but I do want to warn you before you specifically buy on the Nintendo Switch. I think the Nintendo Switch perfectly suits this art style and gameplay, and I'm sure many of you out there do as well. At $30, I'll take a few crashes and boss fight redos for the experience that is the Mageseeker, and I 100% recommend you do the same. Maybe wait for a patch if you're not the most patient person though. Be sure to check out my other videos like my review of the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. Absolute classic. Also be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.